What's up, everybody? Blackbeardo here with my fellow music geek, the almighty Manawa. Manawa, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am doing well. On this episode of Killer Tracks, we're going to explore Radiohead's Lift, one of the greatest lost tracks of all time, and a fan favorite of tons of headheads like us.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite Lost track and probably my favorite song
Wow,
by them.
starting off big.
Yeah.
Man, awesome. Well, we'll also consider the different versions of the song now known and decide which one is the best. So you're going to want to stick around to the end when we figure all that out for you. So, Manawa, anything else you want to say about why you chose this song for? I mean, this is our first episode of this show, of which we plan to do many. So, why did anything else you want to say about why you picked Lift before we dive in?
Not really. I mean, like I said, this is like one of my favorite Radiohead songs, if not my favorite, one of my favorite songs just ever written. And it's just a very interesting song. The lyrics are very interesting. There's a lot to unfold from it. So we could get a very interesting discussion from this one. So this is why I chose this one.
I think so. I had fun researching it and putting my thoughts together on this. So, let's get started on it. But before we dive in, hey, please subscribe to our channel and click the notifications button. Right? We're going to be putting out a lot of content on this channel, so you're going to want to stay tuned to what we're doing. So click that subscribe, click that notify bell. 3, 2, 1. You did it. Good. All right, here we go. All right, Manawa. How about I hit you with some background on this track?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? All right. So Lift was, for a long time, one of the greatest lost tracks. All right. I became a Radiohead fan with the release of OK Computer in 1997. I bought it on the day it came out, and I told everyone about it, right? I loved this album. I was aware of who Radiohead was, but I had not really gotten super into them, although I'd been getting kind of into them because of I'd come to appreciate the Bends, even though I had kind of written Radiohead off after Pablo Honey. I really liked the Bends. And then when OK Computer came out, I was like, cool, I'm going to buy this. And I loved it. It blew my mind. It was such an incredible record. Personally, I think I'm kind of responsible for the album becoming so popular.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much due to me. So
Yeah.
I was just talking it up anyway. So this was also the early days of the internet. So my high school self started surfing for what we could expect from Radiohead's next album, right? Back then it was like dial up, right? You didn't have just weren't constantly connected to the internet. I know that's impossible for you to understand.
Yeah.
But it was back in the ancient days, if you will. So I believe I discovered Lift in that context because I loved OK Computer, and I was like, one of the cool things about the internet was you could find tracks that were not easy to find. You could just go on, you could look for a website from a band that you really, a fan site for a band you really liked, and they'd have these little audio clips of songs you'd never heard before. And I'm pretty sure that's how I heard Lift. It was probably some kind of grainy real audio file, which I know you have no idea what a real audio file is, but that was before MP3, there was real audio files. And so, it was probably on some fan website, and I just remember hearing it, and it was probably not even the full song, but it was a clip, and I just remember hearing it and being like, this song is amazing, right? And just loving it. So probably it's probably the live version from 1996 that I had heard, that I still have that version on my computer in an MP3 format. But suffice to say, I think every Radiohead fan was expecting and hoping for Lift to make the cut for album 4, which eventually became Kid A. But that didn't happen.
It probably would have been really. It would have been really out of place on Kid A.
Well, we know that for sure now, yeah. I mean, no doubt. But we didn't know that at the time. We didn't know what to expect from Kid A, right? And so, in fact, that kept on happening. I think every album after that, fans were hoping that Lift would make the cut, and it didn't make Kid A, it didn't make Amnesiac, it didn't make Hail to the Thief, or In Rainbows, or King of Limbs, or Moon-Shaped Pool. And I think most Radiohead fans, after A Moon-Shaped Pool, had just kind of figured we'd never get a studio version, because the band just seemed like they had left that kind of feel, that sound, that direction along, in the past, a long time ago. That is until 2017, which what happened in 2017?
20th anniversary of OK Computer.
That's right. Okay, not okay, right? Finally gave us the definitive studio version of Lift, the band's official. This is our definitive studio version of Lift. I got to be honest, as cool as it was to finally have a studio version of Lift, the one we got on OK Not Okay was not really what I think a lot of heads had in mind. Like it wasn't really what we were hoping for. We enjoyed it, we liked it, we were grateful to finally get a studio version of this like song that we all longed for, but it didn't quite have that same drive, that same energy that that live version, from those live versions we'd heard from '96 had. And that's why it was so awesome when we got like 3 more versions with the mini discs that leaked in 2019. At long last, I think these better reflected what fans hoped for back then. And it makes sense because those were actually recorded in that era, right? And
Yeah.
as opposed to being something that the band kind of revisited the song to put it on Okay Not Okay, these were the versions that were authentic to that era. So, Manawat, did you know anything about the song Lift before it was officially released?
No, not really, because at that point, like back in 2017, I wasn't really into Radiohead. I was
Okay.
I just started getting into music, and I don't I'd maybe heard of Radiohead at that point, but I just didn't really care for them. Yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can get that. I mean, because they're not the easiest band to get into, for a lot of people. They're one of those that you just kind of have to give it a shot for a while, and then they just start to grab you, and you realize the greatness of it, or you just have to hear the right track, and then you hear the greatness of it. But let's talk about why it took so long to release. So that's really one of the interesting questions about this track. It's such a catchy, strong like rock song. It's the kind of song that most bands would just like put out there as like a lead single from their newest album, but for some reason Radiohead took forever to release it. It seemed to have tons of commercial potential at the time. So the question is just like, why didn't they? So there's some interesting things the band has said over the years about why they didn't release it. In 1999, Ed O'Brien called it bog shite and said they were very happy to leave it off the album. Right. And that, he was kind of doing a diary for album number 4 at the time, which ended up being Kid A. And he was talking about a lot of the stuff they were working on. And there wasn't much talk about Lift. And so I think it was in that context that he made that comment. Right. I think he was saying like they were, it's surprising he called it bog shite because it's not, but
Yeah.
I think they it just reflects that it was not something that had like kind of captured their imagination as a band at that time. In 2000, Tom York said, "We haven't lost the song. We played it too much in a certain way that didn't work, in my opinion. It didn't feel right, so we need to approach it in a different way, but at the time of OK Computer, it was impossible to get into rearranging it because everyone had fixed ideas on what to play, and we'd all just got into a habit we couldn't break." So I would say they kind of lost the spark, right? They lost the spark of what the song originally was, and they just couldn't get behind it as a band.
Yeah. That happens a lot, and it just would have been a lot of out of place on Kid A. That's probably one of the main reasons why they left it off the album.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that happens a lot with great songs.
Yeah.
You hear it all the time.
Well, it's happened with Radiohead over the years. I mean, this
Yeah.
isn't the first song that they wrote that was a great song, and people expected it to be on the next album after they initially, kind of played it live or something like that, and it didn't show up for several records. And they're not the only band who have done something like that either. So after 2000, it sounds like they just lost the spirit of it and can never recapture the feel of the 96 version. However, around 2015, Johnny Greenwood said they had reworked it and were kind of into it again. I'm guessing this reworking is the one that is reflected in the recording we get on OK Not Okay, right? Because it has a different feel to what, it's a little, it's not as driving. It's got a, I don't know. How would you just describe it in one word? Like
it's a lot more mellow than
yeah.
the original recording.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's got that mellow feel to it for sure. But that's what they were into, when they recorded it and when they put out OK Not Okay. They were never really happy with, how they had recorded it, I guess, back in the OK Computer era. So that's what we got. Now, even though they've moved way beyond it at this point, there's one huge fact that will always define Radiohead, at least in part. And that's the massive success of Creep early on in their career. So, in a way, I sometimes feel like you can look at Radiohead's entire career since then as a soft reaction to being quickly catapulted into international stardom based on one song, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of imagine how that would feel as an artist when you've got lots of songs and all of a sudden everybody defines you according to one song, right? And that would get really annoying really quickly.
Yeah. And I feel like that lift sometimes kind of reflects that just because, like you said, it's very driving, unlike a lot of their other songs. It's got a really catchy melody like Creep did. So, I definitely understand why they left it off like an album, but it still makes me sad that they never put it on an album. And
yeah, I mean, I understand, I guess, looking at those comments why they didn't, but it's always Radiohead fans ever since the Bends have had this relationship with Radiohead where it's like, could you just rock out like you did back in the day?
yeah, and I feel like there's like at least normally one song on an album that kind of has like the earlier sound to it.
Yeah.
I feel like they always kind of have that sound, at least one song in the album that has that sound. I feel like on In Rainbows they kind of went back to that original formula.
They did, and they've and they're a band that wants to progress, but I think it's just they like the Bends, I think for a lot of people was where people like really fell in love with Radiohead, and that album is just full of like really melodic rock songs, and you're like, man, that album was such a great album. Why can't you keep making music? Like, why do you have to make difficult music, right? It's kind of mentality. But now, the heads have at this point have pretty much just been like, we love the difficult music, right? That's one of the things we love about Radiohead. But I wonder, maybe they felt, this is kind of where I was going with the Creep thing. Maybe they felt like Lift was too good to put out just a few years after Creep, right? They haven't really dealt in radio ready hits since then, and I think after Creep threatened to define them forever so early on, they wanted to be sure they had control of their reputation and never gave it to another single song again. So you kind of think like if they had released Lift, back in the late 90s on album 3 or album 4, as like a lead single, it could have like been a Creep effect again for them, right? It could have just been such a huge song that it defined them and overshadowed all of their other work, right? So, I think that's my kind of theory on why they put off this song for so long. Is the versions that we heard back then sound like they could have been big hits, but they may have liked the song but didn't want it to be a big hit, right? They wanted to do it kind of on their own terms and in terms of how they were growing as a band at that time.
Yeah, and that happened with a lot of the other songs that were left off the album, like I Promise. They probably left it off because it could have just been Creep Part 2, which you don't want that to happen if you're Radiohead again. You don't want to be defined just because of one or two songs. Some people are okay with that just because they get famous, but at the same time, there are other bands that want people to recognize all their other songs,
right? Because
they're great songs and they deserve to be recognized.
I mean, for sure. And Radiohead had a ton of songs like this during that era. Lift was probably the most desired of all of them. But I remember Big Ideas, which originally came out on In Rainbows, also I think I first heard it on the Meeting People is Easy movie, which came out between OK Computer and Kid A. And so that one didn't see the light of day for 10 years, right? And I think a lot of people thought that was a lost track. Big Boots also came out like on OK Not OK, and that was another one that was more in like the Bend style. And we knew they had tried to record and never saw the light of day. So it's like, they just had you could go. The list goes on, right? They've got a lot of tracks.
Yeah.
They still do have some tracks that people. One that comes to mind is "Follow Me Around." That's a track. I don't even know if you've ever heard that one, but that's also a track that shows up in Meeting People is Easy, and people have wanted that one for years, and it's just never come out. So they've got a lot of songs. They're just one of these bands that has a ton of songs that they go through, and the mini discs themselves will show that, right? If you go through those, there's a ton of stuff on there from the
Yeah.
OK Computer era that, I mean, we'd never even heard of when those mini discs came out. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about what this song is about. All right.
Hmm.
So I want to say, here's the part where we want to hear from all you viewers, right? What do you think Lift is about? Comment below, right? Tell us what you think it's about, because we're about to offer our opinions, and we want to hear from you guys as well, because this is a really interesting song. So, Manawa, what do you think this song is about?
Well, so I looked at the lyrics, and kind of what I thought about it was it's about trying to recover from like a traumatic what's the word? Something traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
cuz he's just kind of like, sit down, you're safe now,
Hmm.
it's all okay. They won't hurt you anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I thought when I looked at the lyrics for this song. I could be completely off, but that's just what I thought when I looked at this song. When I looked at the lyrics.
Yeah, I mean that sounds about right to me. So here, I mean, I would agree with what you said, and here's kind of my expansion on some of those ideas, right? So we have to start by remembering that a lift is the British slang for an elevator, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the song is about. It's lift means elevator in this context. So I feel like this song is about being released from some place you've been stuck inside of, right? I think the lift signifies false promises. It's supposed to elevate you, right? An elevator is supposed to elevate you
Yeah.
mechanically, right? But it does so by confining you. It assaults you with the smell of air conditioning, right? So air conditioning is supposed to make you comfortable and everything, but you kind of think about it. You ever smelled air conditioning and it smells bad,
Yeah, it doesn't
right? So it
smell
makes you comfortable and
particularly
it
good.
kind of smells mechanical and gross, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the smell of manufactured comfort, right? Not like true comfort, but manufactured comfort. Um, until you realize you're really stuck in the belly of a whale, right? You're
Yeah.
really stuck in the abyss, right? Trapped at the bottom of the ocean. So, and that all meshes, right, with the technophobic outlook that Radiohead had at the time of making OK Computer, when they would have recorded and written this song and recorded it originally, right? They were very, one of the big themes of that album is technophobia, right?
Hmm.
Just the fear of like what technology is going to do to us as human beings, which is a very like kind of interesting thing to think about what's played out
Yeah.
since that album came out. Again, it's weird for you because you've grown up not really knowing anything but like this explosion of technological advancements. But I mean, I remember the days before the internet, right?
Yeah.
I was probably about your age when the internet became a thing, even a possibility, and it was very like, you know, not nowhere near what it is today back then. Um, so maybe Lyft is about breaking out of the wonders of modern technology and the false hopes they give, emptying all your pockets, right, as he says, and coming home to a simpler way of life, right?
Yeah.
I kind of think that's what, as I kind of searched through those lyrics and tried to kind of figure out what Tom's getting at. That's what came to me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that makes sense a lot. The getting trapped in like you said, like a lift, metaphorically, that makes a lot of sense because in the music video for the song, he does get trapped in a lift. That's kind of the main
Mm-hmm.
point of the music video. So that makes a lot of sense for that to be the point of the song. You're getting trapped in something and you can't get out. And you just want to get out of there, and you just want to forget everything.
Yeah, exactly. I was also thinking it's like it could reflect Tom's anxiety about the lift of fame and fortune, right? So, they had experienced over the last several years when he wrote this song in the roughly 1996. They had been kind of catapulted to fame, right? And you know, so Creep was a huge hit and everywhere except the UK, and it was not a I mean it was a minor hit in the UK, but it was a big hit in like the US and a bunch of other places. Um, and then the Benz was a pretty big hit in Britain itself, right? So they had kind of
Yeah.
conquered all of the areas and were famous everywhere they probably wanted to be famous. And I think he was kind of being like, man, this fame and fortune is it's kind of crazy, right? It does weird things to you as a human being, and so to me, Lift could also be like about this elevation, this false elevation to happiness, right? Again, he'd rather like empty out all of his pockets and go home, right? Be done with maybe be done with all the fortune, be done with all the being elevated onto a platform, lifted onto a platform, and just go home and be safe, right? And I think it's a really interesting song because it's an optimistic Radiohead song in my opinion, right?
Yeah, we don't really hear many of those, especially, they do have a song called Optimistic.
Especially the song Optimistic is anything but optimistic.
Yeah.
Is like anti-optimistic.
Yeah.
So, but I really do think this is my read on this song is it's actually an optimistic song, which is maybe what the band was getting at when they're saying like it didn't fit with what we were trying to do at the time, right? They wanted to do something which which reflected maybe a lot of paranoia and fear for the world. And here's this optimistic song that ends with some kind of optimistic lines, right? Today is the first day of the rest of your days, right? That's kind of a new beginning, right? Fresh start. And so lighten up, squirt, right? Hey, don't take everything so heavy, right? Lighten up about your life and take it a little less seriously.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how does all that sound to you?
That now that I think about it, it makes a lot of sense. The fact that it's optimistic and they wanted to leave it off the album because OK Computer is not an optimistic album, and they don't really write optimistic songs. So it probably would have just felt weird to have an album like all their albums pretty much have a pessimistic feel to it. Have an album pretty much that's completely pessimistic, except for that one song that's completely optimistic. It doesn't make sense to put it on an album, and I understand why they would leave it off the album and why that's the meaning of it, behind the song.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Cool. Right on. Glad I'm making sense.
Yeah.
So, all right. There are 4 studio versions of this song that I'm aware of, and numerous live versions now. There's numerous live versions on the mini discs, and then there's 3 studio versions on the mini discs, and then there's the OK Not OK version. I think the 3 versions on the mini disc version are all pretty similar to one another. I listened to them several times leading up to recording this, and just don't find like a ton of. I mean, there are definite differences, but I don't find huge stylistic differences in the style they did them in. So I want to consider just the mini discs, kind of those 3 tracks as like one version, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got the OK Not OK version. So all that said, what version do you prefer?
I definitely got to go with the mini discs version, because when I first heard it, it was about a time when I started losing interest in Radiohead. Then I heard that song, and I fell back in love with Radiohead.
Awesome.
And I haven't fell out of love again. So I definitely got to go with mini discs. I mean, it's one of my favorite songs ever written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Radiohead taught you a lesson. They taught you that true love waits, right?
Yep.
Just
they did.
Very Radiohead lesson right there, right?
Yep.
I gotta agree, right? Far and away, I was so thankful we got the mini discs because they're amazing. It's like one of the greatest gifts that a band has ever gifted to its fan base by far. But it's the version that we all wanted for so long, right? And I know Radiohead, it wasn't the version they wanted to give us, but it was the version we all wanted. And it's really cool as a fan. As a fan who's just loved this band for so long to get that version and to be able to enjoy it. It would have been cooler if we had gotten it, I feel like, back then, and it had been like a huge hit. But I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe when Radiohead gets around to playing live again at some point, that they're gonna bust out Lift for us and maybe do it the old school style. I don't know.
Maybe if they're feeling good one night, like they do when they play Creep.
There you go. Right. Maybe if the spirit's got to move them, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So good stuff. So I think that about does it for Lift by Radiohead. Anything else you want to say about it?
It's a great song.
It's a great song. Boom. You heard it here first.
Yep.
All right. All right. So don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. What's your favorite version of Lift, right? Do you prefer the OK Not OK version? We want to hear from you all in the comments below. What do you think the song means, right? What does it mean to you? We just want to hear what you think about what we thought about Lift and anything else you have to add to the discussion. So let's make this a huge discussion thread about Lift. One of Radiohead's greatest songs and a killer track for sure. All right.
All right.
Thanks for watching this episode of Killer Tracks, y'all.
See ya.
Bye.